Hello. One reason the videos I'm replying to don't appear is because when I put them in that box and then save the video on an automatic upload, it doesn't really save that text, so I have to go and add it later. So anyway, I do try to put the links in there. Okay, I seen the To Be Serious reply. I've decided to attach my reply to this one. I've also watched Cody's original video. I've not seen a lot of the responses to that. I did watch Darwin's Hamsters reply, yours, and Mendham's and Dill Demonique's. I think the thing about love here is that, love is a beautiful thing. I'm all for embracing that and romanticizing it and all the rest. But all of that romanticization of it goes on in a little bubble where, love is a term that has yet to be defined. It's one of these classic terms that is so important to us in our everyday life, and yet we can't really define it in any analytical way. But we have sort of gotten a hold of the phenomena, at least romantic love. And that hold is that we know that our urges to feel love and our capacity to feel love, romantic love, comes from urges built into us by the DNA. And we know that for the DNA to survive, we have to procreate. So, more or less, without assigning actual intentionality to the DNA, it's a fairly good metaphor to talk about the DNA as though it had interests, and those interests are in us procreating. Now, a funny thing about DNA that's different than an individual is when an individual is trying to do something, they're trying to get their actions so that if they act a certain way, they get certain results, and we want high percentages of accuracy. 30% of being able to do something is not necessarily good. It's not necessarily our goal. It can be. I can think of examples, but pretty much we want to get things down to 90% of the time or 99.9. But DNA doesn't have to work that way. DNA can work with small percentages, right? So the DNA, for example, if some animal, if 80% of its offspring die and are eaten by other animals, that can work out for the DNA, not only because the DNA is in those other animals that are getting food that way, but also even if the DNA only cared about that animal, let's say this insect in this example, that's fine. It can have 1,000,000 eggs and only 20% survive. And if it can keep generating generations that way, the DNA will be fine with it. So similarly in our case, the lust and the urges to love inside you, they motivate you to have some partnership. The DNA doesn't care if that partnership is unequal or has problems or creates stress for you, so long as you reach that point of procreation, and obviously, people do. So it's necessary to not just follow our love and to worship love and to think of love in this romantic way of the hallmark love, which is really something that people, if they are in that kind of love, like To Be Serious has said, that should be reason for caution. That over-the-top kind of love, that's following love purely. And as I say, the love is given to us for reasons that are not entirely in our full interest as an individual. They're in our interest as a species, and I think that's enough reason to engage with those and take those as valid impulses. But we're intellectual creatures, and we also need to bring in other elements, like, for example, Dill Demonique was talking about how if you pretend to love somebody less than you actually do, there's a certain amount of safety and control there. And it's true in the sense that I've seen this practically. If when you really show somebody your full affection, you can scare them off and it can backfire. But I want to be in an honest relationship. I want to be with somebody that I can tell my real feelings and express them fully. So if that's going to happen, we're not going to get that from following just the impulses of love. We're going to have other things coming from our philosophy and whatever source that tell us, for example, to me, I want love, but I want there to be honesty there. I want there to be trust there. I want love, but I want there to be a balance. I don't want an unequal relationship. If you just follow love, you might say, oh, well, look, the unequal relationships, people are getting what they want, and they're managing to hold on to partners they would otherwise lose. To me, that's not good enough. See, I also want balance in that relationship. I don't just want to hold on to some person that's attractive or interesting in some way. I want them to want me. I want there to be a balance. Now, it'll never be perfectly balanced because, as in Mendham said, there's something beneficial to You don't want to be codependent. You don't want it to be the extreme case. But there's something beneficial to being able to, make up for your partner's shortcomings. I mean, you're good at organizing a trip. You organize the trip and you take them together, and you have a better trip because your partner's with you. And they're better at, I don't know, organizing the household, so they do that. And this kind of balance is something that I want in a relationship, but I don't see it as coming from this urge to love or lust after another human being. Um, I see it as coming from other parts of the philosophy. Um, Now, the other thing I want to talk about is just this tendency. Dill mentioned that her father was saying there's always in a relationship somebody getting fucked and somebody doing the fucking. And there's a sad grain of truth in that. I've noticed a lot of giving type people getting with taking type people. Now, in Cody's case, I think he's in a good position. He's told us about a relationship where he felt he was the one really taking the extra affection, and to the point of not even noticing he was receiving it, and a relationship where he was the one giving and it was the other person taking. So there's room for balance in that. He's seen both things. It's much worse if you find that you're always the taker or always the giver, because then you're in a cycle where you need to branch out somehow to find the source of balance. I think that can be done. I think it's a huge thing for us in our lives to make sure that if we are giving people, that we're not just with people that are takers that we like because they know how to receive. That's the thing. That's what the taker gives the giver, is that the giver likes to give, and other givers sometimes don't know how to receive. They don't know how to take compliments. They don't know how to take the kind of thing that they would give. They need to find balance in their life so that they can take what they would give. And often it's just a lot easier to find somebody who knows how to take, how to give, and there you go. But the ideal, of course, is two people that both know how to give and take, and both want to give and receive, and they find some balance in which they can be honest, in which they can support each other, in which they can accept each other's flaws and faults as a part of their character, and to a certain degree even celebrate those, in a healthy way. So those are my thoughts on the subject. I find it a really interesting subject that classically philosophers have stayed away from, just because, what introduces bias? More unavoidable bias than love. I can't think of anything. But really, philosophy, as I've said, is about a worldview and a way of interacting with the world. And to ignore love is to have a system that's, hopelessly incomplete. So it's a good question. I like to see so many people discussing it, and thanks to Cody, because I think obviously one reason that this conversation got going is not because of his viewership, is because he made a video that was very personal and he put himself out there, which I appreciate. And so good luck to Cody and everybody else worrying this stuff through, and thanks for the interesting ideas that people have posted on this already.